Hi guys. I figured that I wanted to make a video about my time in Springfield because I'd promised to do that probably about 2 weeks ago. It's been, probably about a week since we got back. It was overall really awesome. We had a great time. We spent Wednesday night, all of Thursday, and then some of Friday morning and afternoon there. So we were probably there for about 36 hours to just start off with that. We stayed at the DoubleTree, which was a Hilton hotel. Kind of cool, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So the hotel was zero point 0.2 miles from the Lincoln Historic Neighborhood, which is, I think, 8th and Jackson. I'm not quite sure about the streets. I'm not the best with directions. And that was pretty cool. I mean, the hotel was kind of older, so, the elevator had no air conditioning, and, that was kind of strange, and sometimes it would, we had to, put our key card in to, go up, to our room. So, I mean, overall, it was a really kind of cool experience to be able to stay in the heart of downtown Springfield. So hotel was good. So first night, we got there, got unpacked, got settled for a minute, and then we went on a history walk that was called, I think it was Lincoln's Ghost Walk. So what that was we were going to different sites throughout the historic district and kind of just around the city that had to do with Lincoln. We went to his house, we went to the First Presbyterian Church where apparently he attended a few church services, although he wasn't a member there, with his family. And let's see, where else? I think we were supposed to go to the Old State Capitol, but we didn't because it started raining. So we bought tickets, we got there, and it kind of looked like it was going to rain, but we were hoping that it would hold out because when we got there, it was a 7:30 tour, and I think it said that rain was supposed to come in at 8. So we were just kind of sitting there, had no umbrella, no nothing. I was really unprepared, didn't have my rain jacket, even though I'd packed it, but it was in the hotel room. And literally 30 minutes into the tour, it started pouring down rain. So my poor dad had to go back to the hotel, and he had to go get us an umbrella, which they luckily had at the concierge desk, but I think it was the last one or something crazy like that. But so the ghost tour was actually very interesting. We got to hear all these creepy stories about how Lincoln's ghost, haunts the White House, maybe haunts his house in Springfield. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Or how his body was stolen from his tomb in 1876 by a group of thugs. So that was kind of cool, even though they didn't succeed in stealing it. So that was the first night. And then we went back to the hotel after we had our tour kind of cut short by the huge storm that actually passed through. We went back to the hotel, we went to bed. And so we, the next morning, had a 9 o'clock entry time to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum, which was literally, I think, a 4-minute walk, 2 to 4 minute walk. I didn't time it. I'm not quite sure. But so the museum is set up kind of like this. So you have, you start at the log cabin, which is his younger years up to the election of 1860. And then you come back out into the big atrium. And then you go into the White House part, which is 1860 to 1865, his presidency, all that. I thought the museum was actually very well done because the way they do it is they make you feel really included in the Lincoln story. So it's not just a normal history museum where you're walking around looking at this and it says, oh, this is from, 1832 or something. No, it was really interactive, and they had a lot of displays, dioramas that, showed Lincoln at various stages of his life. They had a young Lincoln, in front of the log cabin, he had, a book with him. They had, I think they, besides, the huge White House, which was apparently, they made that to scale, they had his family, standing outside in front of it, and the big atrium, and you can take pictures with them. That's cool. They had a display of him at Ford's Theater, which, was where he was assassinated. And they had other kind of cool, displays, so that was kind of a different thing than rather just presenting artifacts and then having, captions to go with it. On most museum walls, you'll have something here, and then you'll have, a big thing to read about it. So that was very cool. Also, at the museum, they had 2 little movies you could watch. One of them was, I think it was called Ghosts in the Library, and that was about 20-30 minutes. It was awesome. Although that one was kind of loud, like, and your seat vibrated, like the explosions were all around you and your seat vibrated, so it kind of made you feel like very included in it again. And then I can't remember what the second one was, but it was just like a 30-minute little thing, so that was cool. And they had a Lincoln Art Gallery where you could go and walk in, and there are like busts of Lincoln, there are pictures that people have painted of different scenes of his life, or like people have, you know, painted of him, or like there were sculptures of him, which was really cool. So after the museum, which probably if you want to have a very thorough experience, you probably need to spend about 3 to 3.5 hours there, because there's so much to see and do. Like, I don't think I saw it all, you know, and I spent probably 3.5 hours there walking around looking at the exhibits. Like, I was able to go through and get the highlights of it, but like the little like nitpicky stuff I don't think I've seen. So of course really want to go back to have a second experience to see if I definitely will be able to catch something that I didn't see the first time. But anyway, so my dad highlighted a huge like itinerary that we wanted to do, because during the summer Springfield has something they call History Comes Alive, which is basically they have like living history demonstrations. Like, there will be like Union soldiers walking around. Like, at the museum there was a guy dressed up as a Union soldier, and he would like let you like feel the uniform made of wool and whatnot, or like you could just like talk to him. So they do stuff like that. They have the impersonators. They have I think they had like different kind of like displays you could do or something. I'm not quite sure. But so there was a Lincoln impersonator by the name of Fritz Klein, who's actually pretty famous as far as, I guess, Lincoln impersonators go. He's done a lot of like stuff with National Geographic, and I think some stuff with the History Channel. But so he was going to be there the day that we were there, doing his Lincoln impersonation or whatever. And they had an event at noon that was called, what was it? Lunch with Lincoln at one of their local restaurants. And I think what they do is they alternate depending on like the day they set it up or whatever. And so my dad was like, you know what, let's do that, because even though he was going to be at the museum the next hour at 1:00, my dad was like, you know, it's probably better for it to be like more personal for us to see him there. And I was like, okay, you're right. So we went and found that. I think we got there maybe a little bit late. But so we had our food or whatever, and he didn't show up for a while. I think he was running a bit late himself. Maybe he had some other thing that he was doing beforehand. And so we were probably halfway through lunch, and I was talking to my mom, and then she kind of stopped me and was like, hey, like, look at the door. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna lie. I was very shocked. I was like very, very amazed. I was like, oh my God, like, I just could not put two sentences together, you know, 2 words together, even 2 sentences together. Like, ask my parents, they will tell you, and they'll probably laugh at me for it, but whatever. And you know what, the funny thing was, looking back at it now, like, he was so, like, Fritz Klein is one of the sweetest people I've met in a long time. Like, he's so like patient, and he apparently knows pretty much his stuff with the Lincoln stuff, but he was able to talk to us for a minute and tell us how he got into it, like the fact that he moved from Hawaii to Illinois to do this, and that he's been doing it for, I think he said 40 years. So, you know what, it was really cool, and I think that it was a definitely like a good choice to have gone to the little Lunch with Lincoln thing, because we wouldn't have had that experience with him had we just skipped out and stayed at the museum for another hour and waited for him to come, because by the time that we left the museum, so many people were there. And keep in mind, we got there at 9:00, so it was like pretty much we had it to ourselves. But by the time we left, everybody seemed to be there. So it was really cool getting to talk to Fritz for a second and find out about him and find out about, you know, what drove him to do all this Lincoln stuff, and, you know, just how long he's been doing it and the different reactions he gets. You know, people are like, you know, really amazed that he actually does really look like Lincoln. And I think that is just like, I was just awestruck. And I mean, I still am sitting here recording this video thinking about it. So after that, we went back to the museum because we hadn't done the gift shop. And in order to go and see Fritz at the restaurant, we had to leave. And so to make it on time. Although technically, I guess we could have probably stayed those extra like 15 minutes looking back at it now, but we didn't know that. So we went back to the museum probably about 12:45, 1-ish. We shopped around in the gift shop. The gift shop is huge and it's really cool because you have all these different kind of items. Like you have books, you have movies, you have little trinket stuff. Like they have like these huge pennies and they have like top hats. It's really cool. I have a picture of me wearing a top hat and then getting like holding like a little like penny or whatever. And I'm gonna show y'all some of the stuff that I got. So this is like a Lincoln's like silhouette is carved into the rock. Like you kind of have to see it here. That was kind of like a cool trinket, but I actually got this at the Lincoln Home National Historic Site Museum gift shop. So I didn't actually get this at the Lincoln Library and Museum gift shop, but that's kind of cool. I got 2 movies. This one is about the assassination of Lincoln, and then it has like photographs in here and like little stuff that you can read. And then this is a PBS special on the Gettysburg Address that I got there. I got 2 books. This is the first in a huge series of 3 books dealing with the life of Lincoln. Like usually you see one book, you know, covering 1809 to 1865, which is cool. But I think that with this series of 3, this is number 1, that a lot more will be able to be discussed in depth rather than having to cram it in. So that is the first book. And then the second book in that series, this is the years this is the first one. I'm sorry, crap. So this is 1809 to 1849. And then this one is 1849 to 1856. And then the third one hasn't come out yet. And that's probably going to be 1856 to 65 or whatever. Let's see. I got a few shirts, but they're not clean, so I can't show them to you. And then I got, hold on. Ooh, here we go. I got this little hoodie that says Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum. It's pretty cool. Okay, throw that back that way. And then, of course, I had to get, like, a little Lincoln. Like, that's so cute. My dad was like, oh, my God, you have to. And I'm like, yes, I do. I also have a coffee tumbler that's actually in my realm of things to take back to school. So I don't have it with me right now, but I was just going to show y'all that stuff. Okay, so let's see. We went to the gift shop. Then what did we do? Did we, oh, that's right. So probably by the time we left the museum, it was probably about 2:15. And we headed over to the Lincoln House. So, like I said, the home is in, like, a historic neighborhood. And it's really cool because they've preserved all the houses that were there, like, during the time that the Lincolns lived there, up until 1861 when they moved to Washington because he became president, obviously. And you could go around and look at the houses. I think there was 1 or 2 that you could actually go in besides the Lincoln House. But they would have these, like, little historical markers in front of them, and then you could do, like, an audio tour, so you would, like, call in the number it said, and then push, like, 56 or whatever the code was for the house, and then it would tell you about who lived there, like, what their story was, how they, you know, interacted with the Lincolns, etc., etc. So that was really cool to see. And if you want to go to the Lincoln home, it's free, you know. Apparently, when Robert Lincoln, who was Lincoln's oldest son, sold the house to the National Park Service or something like that, maybe the National Park Service wasn't around when he did, I'm not quite sure, he did so under the condition that the house would be open to the public and free of charge, so you can't, you know, you don't pay money for it. But you do have to get, like, a time slot to go in because it's a very, like, it's a small house, and they can probably fit only, I think, probably 2 groups max in the house at one time, so you have to get a time slot, which is fair. So ours was 3:30, and we probably waited for about 10 minutes. Like, it told us to line up at 3:20, but we didn't actually end up going into the house at 3:30 because, like I said, those tour groups have to clear out. That way you can put more people in there. But the house was awesome. Most of the stuff is actually original, and the stuff that isn't is just really, really closely replicated. Like, I believe the carpet in there wasn't original, but they got it very, very close. Or like some of the bed frames were not original. Little pieces were though, like the little tables in the living room. I think some of the chairs in there. I feel like either the curtains were original or they were a replica. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. But the stove was original in the kitchen. That was pretty cool. And that was apparently like a top-of-the-line stove in that day, which was awesome to see. The house itself is really small. So it's like the stairs, when you go up the stairs, and I am the worst person with stairs, I will be the first to tell you, are really, really steep. So I was kind of just like, I couldn't like hold on to the wall because they don't want you to like mess up the paint, obviously. Because I think the wallpaper, the wallpaper has to be original, if they didn't want me touching the wallpaper to mess up the paint. So I kind of had to be really careful on those steps. But other than that, I think it was really cool to see his house and see where he spent really a good majority of his life, you know, like he lived in that house for I think 17 years because he bought it right after Robert was born, and then he lived there until he was, you know, off to Washington to go and be president. So after the Lincoln House tour, Fritz Klein came back to the Lincoln House, and we got to talk to him again and take some pictures. He was just taking pictures with everybody, like, in the little, like, backyard. And then we had nothing to do until dinner, so we went back to the hotel. We went and hung out. The weather was actually really holding up for us. We thought it was going to start raining at some point again, but it didn't, which was really nice. And then we went and had a nice dinner, and that was awesome. And then I think we were done. Yeah, we were done for the night because we were going to do another, like, we were going to see about doing, like, the history walk at Oak Ridge Cemetery where Lincoln was buried, but they didn't do it that night or something like that. They either didn't do it or, like, we missed it. No, that's right. So we drove out there because it said the walk was at 7. And we drove out there, great, you know, but we couldn't find the group that was going. We were like, okay, like, do y'all meet at a visitor center? Do you meet at the Lincoln Tomb? Like, we have no idea. So we ended up skipping out on that. So I don't know if they actually did that. But so we did get to go and see the Lincoln Tomb while we were looking for that history walk that apparently, I don't know if it happened or not. And the tomb itself is really kind of cool. Like, it's like the main feature of that, like, cemetery. So when you drive in, there are, like, signs that are like, oh, Lincoln Tomb this way. And that's, you know, very helpful to direct you, even though it's not that big of a place, like, when you first drive in. Like, you can obviously see it, but still that is kind of helpful. And so the tomb itself is huge, like this massive structure, and at the front of it, they have like a little Lincoln head, like a little bust, I guess is what you call it. And apparently, legend has it, is you are supposed to rub his nose for good luck. So naturally I did, because I need all the luck I can get going into senior year of college. But the tomb wasn't open. Like, you can go inside, but they open it from 9 to 5, and we got there at 7. So my dad was like, oh, well, it's not open, let's come back tomorrow. And I was like, that's actually a good idea, because we were going to be spending probably half the day in Springfield, and then we had to drive on to St. Louis, because we had hotel reservations there, and then we had dinner that night with some family friends. So we need to be there at a certain time. So that was, that was Thursday. So Friday, we got up, and we went back to the Lincoln Presidential Library Museum, but this time we went and got to see the library, which is, I mean, there are like a few displays in there. Like, there's a little replica of the funeral train that carried him from Washington to Springfield. That's cool. And then there are like different, like, I don't know, like newspaper clippings and stuff related to him. And there's really not any, like, big displays there. Those are all over at the museum. But the library was cool to see because that's where most of the, like, scholarly research on Lincoln is done or based out of. So that was really cool. And then we decided to go back to Oak Ridge Cemetery to go and look at the actual tomb, because you can walk into the tomb, it's kind of like a huge, like, mausoleum or whatever. And we got there. And I think we were really the only ones there when we got there, because it was kind of, I think it was like 11 or something. And so you walk in, it's like, the room is like all gold, it's really cool. They have like a statue that the Lincoln Memorial was based off of, so it kind of looks like the Lincoln Memorial because, you know, they built that first before they actually went and built the huge memorial. And then so you walk down this corridor here, so like the room is kind of like a circle like this, and then there's a corridor this way. And that has the crypts of Mary Lincoln and then 3 of Lincoln's sons. I think it's Eddie, Willie, and Tad are buried there because Robert's buried at Arlington because he was the Secretary of War under, I think it was James Garfield, and then Chester Arthur after him once Garfield was assassinated in, 1881 or something like that? I'm not sure. But so Robert is not buried with the rest of his family, but they do have like a little like crypt for him, even though he's not in there, that says Robert Todd Lincoln. And then so at the end of that, you get into the Lincoln burial chamber, which is really kind of cool because it's this huge gold headstone for him. And he's buried under 10 feet of like concrete because after those thieves tried to steal his body, the Lincoln tomb guard or whatever, they realized that they didn't want that to happen again, obviously, even though the thieves didn't get, but I think like a foot out of the tomb before they got caught. But so the Lincoln tomb guard was making a decision about, okay, we need to, you know, make sure he's more secure. So they dug that hole underneath like where the actual headstone is. So he's under the tomb structure. And apparently his coffin has been opened, I think they said 6 times. So between 1865 and 1901, I think was the last time, they opened it 6 times, either because they wanted to make sure he was still in there, or they were like remodeling the tomb, which actually happened, I think, twice. And so that was cool to see. It was really kind of like, I don't know, like I felt really kind of like, again, awestruck because I didn't know how I would feel going to see Lincoln's tomb because Lincoln has become such a really important person in my life, even though, you know, I never met him, which is sad, but I wish I had. No, but it was really kind of very like awe-striking, but also kind of like very surreal and serene to like stand there and just kind of, it was a really good place to like reflect on the fact that even though, you know, we think that Lincoln is like this perfect person, like best president, you know, whatever, he was a human like us. And that's really kind of, I think, something that we as Americans have forgotten about his life, is that he was a human. He made, you know, mistakes, whatever. He had flaws just like the rest of us, but he was able to do amazing things with his life. And I think that, you know, we should learn a lot of lessons from his life and be encouraged by him, that even though we mess up sometimes and are, you know, flawed people, we can rise above that and do great things just like he did. And then after we visited the tomb, we had to, sadly, go on to St. Louis, and let's see, am I forgetting anything? Oh, yes, of course I am. So we went back to the Lincoln home before we went to the tomb, and we got to see a Mary Todd Lincoln impersonator tell stories about the Lincoln's life in Springfield, and she was really great, and that's when I got this, when we were shopping around the gift shop. She was great. She spoke for about, I think it was like 30 minutes. And then we watched like another 30-minute movie beforehand. So we were probably there for an hour before we drove back out to Oak Ridge Cemetery. And jumping forward to, I guess, the present because I forgot that. And then we sadly had to leave even though I didn't want to. But St. Louis was pretty cool. So, I mean, I was glad that I got to see it. Yeah, but that is overall what happened in Springfield. I loved it. It was a really great birthday trip. I'm glad that my parents were able to pull that off for me. And I think that I really needed to see it. And I think that every American or even non-American, you know, if you're interested in Lincoln or if you're not, like, I think that everybody really needs to see that because it's really, you walk away from Springfield and like all the Lincoln historical sites feeling really inspired by his life. And that you feel like you can do the same things that he did, even though nobody's perfect, but, you know, we think that he came pretty close because he just did these amazing things and he just didn't stop, you know, even though he had doubts about himself and he had doubts about like what he was doing, like he just put him aside and was like, all right, you know, we need to save the union. We need to do this. We need to do this. And I mean, he did it. And that's just absolutely incredible. So it was amazing. And I'm so glad that I went, and I'm going back again soon, hopefully. So yeah.